Marketplace with Charles on an 11-day tour of the Holy Land. Take the route Israel traveled to the Promised Land, cross over the Red Sea, and float on the Dead Seas, the lowest point on earth with amazing healing properties. Experience the vibe of Jericho and cruise on the Sea of Galilee to Capernaum, the hometown of Jesus. Visit the pools of Bethesda, Nazareth, Bethlehem, and many more. Walk where Jesus walked and see the Bible come alive. If beautiful memories and an enriched spirit is what you are looking for, then join us in taking Jesus to the marketplace. For more information, call us on +27 72 123 0078 or email israel@artofskincare.co.za.
Welcome to Marketplace with Charles, where dreams are turned into reality. Marketplace is brought to you by Art of Skincare. Art of Skincare, the company that brings out the beauty in you, as well as Kuisa Lodge, situated in the deep of the heart of Mabalingwe Nature Reserve, where you sleep, dream, and wake up with a big five around you. If tranquility is what you are looking for, then Kuisa Lodge is a place to be. I am Charles Ngobeni. On today's program, we meet a creativity facilitator and a coach of note with a wealth of experience in the showbiz and related industries. Well, it's none other than Mr. Michael Lee. Mr. Michael Lee.
Yes, sir.
Should I call you Michael or Mr. or Lee?
Any of the three is fine. Just not all together.
Are you related to Bruce Lee?
I'm not, nor am I related to Michael Jackson. I've spent a long time of my life traveling in the world, and those two are the people that everybody thinks that maybe I am related to, but they both look a bit different from me, so.
Okay, so you took over Michael Jackson and Bruce Lee?
I put them together and then...
Put them together and released a Jew.
Exactly, so you can imagine the dance moves that I have available.
Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
If you don't mind, can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I mean, first of all, thank you for having me on the show, and thank you to the Art of Skincare, which also that lodge sounds tremendous. I hope that you guys will perhaps send me there. But I, as you can probably tell by now from my accent, am not from here. Right? I drove up from Randburg this morning to come to the studio.
Yes.
Basically, I have been in South Africa for 16 years. I came from the United States originally. And so I'm an African American.
You're an African American?
African American, yeah. I'm both South African and American.
Where were you born?
I was born in Connecticut, in the East Coast of the United States. When I was a month old, they moved me to California. And I spent a number of years up and down California, but the rootlessness was built in by then. So I've spent most of my life outside of the States. I'm a citizen of South Africa, proudly, and a citizen of the United States still. Questionably proud, I'm not sure. And I have been living here, as I said, for nearly 20 years. It was 22 years ago the first time I came here. I came here by accident almost with a girlfriend at the time to visit her sister in Cape Town, and the minute I touched down on the ground, I knew I was home. So about myself, I've spent most of my time in South Africa in the film industry as a factual director and producer, but past few years I haven't done that anymore. I'm still working in the film industry, making a couple of major projects, which are drama projects. I don't know if you're familiar with the book Ndaba My Children by Kreta Mutwa. We're making a series from that, so we're still in the process of developing the first season, and one other project that is still further away. But most of my focus in the past couple of years has been focusing on training people and organizations in creative thinking and innovation thought.
So is that all what you're doing? Is it a little bit more?
Well, I mean, like I said, right now, there's some work being done on Ndaba My Children, which is a lot of work, and then I'm mostly focusing on training organizations and people in creative thinking. I've also recently started a new project with partners called the South African Creative Industries Incubator. They're in Pretoria. They've been running for probably about 12 years a music school for the township in the east of Pretoria, Esterust, and training township youth to become professional musicians. And also now they've been running the Creative Industries Incubator for a few years. Together, we're coming together to create something called the Human Innovation Project. which is essentially a combined effort, taking my expertise and theirs, and working with organizations to rehumanize organizations and also reorganize humans.
Okay. You know, my last visit to New York,
Yeah,
I met a black man,
yeah.
and we were just having a conversation.
Okay.
And I said to him, "Oh, so you're an Afro-American?"
Mm-hmm.
He said, "No, I'm not."
And then he said?
He said, "Because there are also white people who are born here, relocated to Africa. There are Africans, white people, who are born in Africa, and they're relocated here. So those are Afro-Americans." And he himself, as a black person, he refused to be called Afro-American. He said to me, "No, I'm not an Afro-American. I was born here. I am an American."
Yeah.
The white people that you see in here who were born in Africa, those are called Afro-Americans. That was a strange way to put it, but I thought maybe it's correct. Now I'm looking at you. Mm-hmm. You worked in Hollywood.
Never really in Hollywood, though.
Yes.
I worked in New York, actually.
You worked in New York.
Yeah,
And you also worked in Czech Republic.
I did, in fact. I lived in Prague for 7 years, and actually I transitioned from being a writer to a filmmaker in Prague.
And you also work here in Africa.
Well, now I live here.
And you eventually decided to settle here.
Absolutely.
Why? I mean, from all these beautiful places, you decide Africa, which you said is a dark continent.
Well, also it's Johannesburg, right? Which people all say, why would you want to be in Johannesburg? But when I first landed in South Africa in 1998, 22 years ago, I landed in Cape Town, actually. But it wasn't so much the city, which everybody loves so much, you know. It was the tarmac at the airport. I literally stepped onto it and felt an energy that felt to be calling me to be here. And, you know, we lose our way along the way, right? And I sort of found my way along the way. I've spent most of my life in transitional societies. Prague, when I was there, was very much a transitional place. There were actually, in 1992, when I went there, there were they separated from the Slovak Republic, Czechoslovakia, and the country had no laws about a lot of things. So there were no laws about certain things, and people could actually just make up their life the way they wanted to. I found here, you know, I settled here 5 years after I first came, got married, have a child here, and so forth. And, you know, this country is very much a transitional country also. Here we are caught very much between, you know, what they used to call the third world and they used to call the first world. Mm-hmm. We're both a developing country and a developed country, you know. I got to vote for the first time in the last elections because I became a citizen about 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm not going to tell you who I voted for, but the point of it is really that I'm all in, you know. I'm very much South African.
After having settled in South Africa since 1998, I want to believe you have studied our economy, you have studied our setup, you have studied our landscape and everything. What would you think is a major holdback to our economic growth?
I think I have to be careful answering that question, right? I'm not an economist, right? I did study political science in university, but I'm not a political scientist, so I'm only coming from perspective of my experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So having said that, I mean, I think it feels like we've kind of been in the same place since I got here, in a way, which is this incredible potential, you know, an incredible sense of something about to happen, which, if there's a reason it's being held back, you know, obviously there have been political issues that have held back growth. Let's not get into those, but one of the things that I found that's, you know, I'm reading right now a book by the guy who started Netflix. And, you know, he talks about the way things work in Silicon Valley in the late 90s and early 2000s. Mm-hmm. You know, and there's not the kind of capital, first of all, here, right, that's being invested in small business. And small businesses usually where innovation is happening, because most of the big businesses in South Africa are not South African businesses, right? With the exception of some of the, you know, mining or financial sector. Most of the businesses in South Africa that have the chance to innovate or do things that are exciting or explosive are small businesses. Yes. And there's not really an environment that has been successful in getting small businesses to actually have investment. You know, the way that you look at Silicon Valley and people putting in $2 or $3 million into businesses that have nothing, right? And still, you know, to this day, there's a show on Netflix called Silicon Valley, which ran for the last 6 or 7 years, which detailed, you know, a modern version of that old explosion, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things, is that there's a lack of confidence in small business in South Africa that is not necessarily fair or merited, right? But what's happening now is that you see parts of Africa are suddenly rushing past South Africa for the first time. You know, Rwanda, Uganda, possibly Kenya, possibly Nigeria are making moves to go into the future in a way that South Africa is still figuring out. You know, I mean, I think one of those things could be, and this is a very dangerous thing for me to say, having not lived here in that time, but I think one of the remnants of apartheid that still sticks with people is a sense of fear. You know, not to exceed or not to do better than everybody else. You know, because it makes them stick out, and then people get upset at them. So I've noticed that a lot, especially in Johannesburg, that people tend to avoid arguments a lot of the time, especially with different cultural groups. You know, I don't know if any of that explains the answer, but I think there's a hold on innovation and new ways of thinking in South Africa based on those kind of factors that is not necessary, nor is it in any way inevitable that it has to continue. You know, but what has to happen is, I think, a concerted effort to train people with a different way of thinking, a different way of approaching, and how that will crack the investment barrier, I don't know.
Look, you like talking about 95% of the grown-ups, which is, I want to believe, is your theory.
No. Shall I give you the exact story? Yes. So quite a long time ago, actually, it was already in the late 1960s that this started. A gentleman named George Land, who worked for NASA.
Yeah.
He trained the NASA scientists, engineers in creative thinking and innovation to create a better, you know, environment there. He decided to find out when it was exactly that we start to lose our creative abilities. Right? Yes. And so he took a group of 5-year-olds and studied them and found that 98% of 5-year-olds, right, are creative geniuses. Simply the level of creativity they exhibit. Right? He went back 5 years later and tested the exact same children. You want to take a guess at how many percent remained creative geniuses at the age of 10? Same kids.
Maybe 70?
Not a bad guess, and very positive, optimistic guess. It was actually 60. 60, okay. About 60. He then did the same thing at 15, so another 5 years later. I would like to take a guess at that one.
45?
You're a very optimistic person. I appreciate that. It's actually 30%. Yeah. So between the age of 5 and 15, same children went down from 98% being geniuses to 30%. Right? Now, he then kind of depressed. Him and his team were kind of like, wow, this is, you know, not terribly encouraging. They decided to test adults, and they not the same children again. Now these were just randomly selected 280,000 adults. You'd like to take a guess now at how many percent of adults still scored as creative geniuses?
I'll say 20.
You are so optimistic, and I appreciate that a great deal, but it was 2%. 2% of adults that qualify as creative geniuses. Now, we don't have enough time in this program for me to go through like a whole explanation of all the theories around that, but obviously there are basically 3 theories as to why that is. First one is probably obvious. It's the one that most people jump to, which is education, right? The idea that our education systems were built around an old style of creating a great deal of efficiency, right? Creating people to go work in the system, probably around the first industrial revolution kind of thinking, factories. Right? So education system is being blamed for that. A guy named Ken Richardson went on to TEDx, did a talk which was probably, I think it's the most watched recording on TEDx ever, about 18 million views. And his theory was around education is destroying our creativity. Right? There's a second reason that people have talked about, which is that, you know, our education system is designed by a society, right? And that society has always encouraged people to be non-creative, to fit into the society. There's a third reason that I've not found as easily out there, but for me it's very clear, and it's really this. Right? Have you ever seen a lion in the bush when you've gone hiking in the bush or something? Have you like run into a lion? There it is in front of you?
No.
Okay, if you did, what would you do?
I'll stand still.
Perfect, right? Now most people don't say that. Most people say they would run because they're not being trained.
You can't outrun the lion.
Unless you have another friend who's slower than you.
Yeah.
In which case, fine. But if you want to preserve your friendship or your friend, you have to stand still, stare the lion in the eyes gently, not aggressively, right? And back up slowly, wave your arms around so it thinks you're big. There's a certain system, right? There's no encouragement to violate that system. No one wants to try something else. Being creative is not useful, right? And, you know, it's the same if you're walking across the street and somebody's drunk and about to run you over at high speed. There's one thing to do, which is the opposite, run away, right? So, personally, it seems like in history up till now, there's been very little encouragement for most people to actually be creative thinkers. Most of the time, it's safer for people to actually just do what they're taught, right? We happen to be, and this has been something that's been identified by a lot of thinkers in the last 50 years already, at a time in history where that is flipping, and where suddenly we are becoming, you know, a society in the world that is going to demand people to be creative, and that following the rules, doing the things the way you're taught and never questioning it is going to be a very bad way to survive. So, you know, up until now, I don't think that 98% falling to 2% is only about education. I think it was a lot about just what people needed to survive, you know? And that's unfortunately going to become a very bad strategy very soon.
Look, Michael, since we started the show with you today, I've been doing what I've been taught to do. Do you mind if we take a short break? Go and find myself. Okay. Maybe I'll come back a different person and do something else which I was never taught and be creative.
Let's try.
Well, viewers, after the break, stay tuned. Welcome back to Marketplace with Charles. I am still sitting here and I'm being changed by the Honorable Michael. Michael, let's talk now.
Yes, sir.
In your own words, how will you define innovation?
You know, I might disappoint you here because to me, innovation is a very simple thing. Yeah. Innovation is creativity put into action.
That's innovation.
That's innovation. Okay. Right? Now, creativity, the definition of creativity I find more interesting in a way because creativity is defined very differently by different people and it gets very complicated. My definition of creativity I like to use is that creativity is the ability to think differently from yourself. Right? So people that are highly creative can still tend to be not truly creative because they are only doing one thing one way. But if you look at great creative minds in history, you know, they will tend to have changed what they do over and over again because every day for them is an exploration of, you know, if I ask people in an audience I'm talking to raise their hand if they'd like to be more creative, everybody raises their hand, right? If I ask them to keep their hand up if they would like to be more uncertain, very few people keep their hands up, and yet creativity is exactly that. It's curiosity, it's uncertainty, it's active curiosity. So creativity is uncertainty. Right? In order to be creative, you have to be willing to question your own thoughts. You know, because our own thoughts are at times the most dangerous of all, because we're, you know, mostly we're convinced that they are right. Right? I mean, we're actually, if you ask human beings, what are we? Right? why are we here on Earth? It's mostly to make judgments, right? I mean, this morning, how many times have you made a judgment? You know, your viewers, how many times have you made judgments about me already on the show? You know, is he good? Is he bad? Is this right or wrong for me? Is what he's saying nonsense or is it true? You know, we do that all the time. We're super good at it, right?
Even my crew, they have already made a lot of judgments about me.
Yeah, and me as well, I'm sure, right?
After having followed you, I realize you help so many people to double their creativity. How can you assist someone out there? How do you do it?
For the last number of years, I developed a specific creativity training that's based on essentially creating a new way of thinking for a person inside of an organization or outside, and then also the organization itself. It's a transformational process. It's based on transforming the way that someone thinks and basically being able to let go of the set of boxes that we have in our mind, right? Like I was saying about the judgments, right? It's, you know, people like to talk about thinking outside of the box. We can't think outside of the box. We live by putting things in boxes. You know, if I say to you, Charles, who are you? And I look at your website, it says one of the things I'm very curious to find out is it talks about you being an alchemist.
Yeah.
Whatever we define ourselves as is a set of boxes in our mind, and we have no skill in thinking out of the box. So when people are told to think out of the box, they generally freeze up and don't have an answer. Rather, it's useful to think, what are the boxes we already have at this moment in our head? And how do we shift those boxes?
I hear you. We've got a lot of youth out there whose creativity looks like it's dead. How can we exhume that?
You know, first of all, I haven't found in my own travels that their creativity looks dead. What's more dead is their belief that their creative thinking can end up achieving anything. If you look at the World Economic Forum's list of the top 10 business skills needed in 2020, 5 of them are creative thinking skills. 5 are relationships among people skills. Now, when you say youth, I'm assuming you're talking about youth here.
Yes.
So one thing to notice is that the World Economic Forum list is really just 2 skills. Creative thinking, innovation, and people relationships. How do people relate to each other? Now, you might notice that those are 2 skills that Africans are especially strong with. And young people are especially strong with creative thinking because, of course, we're tending to lose it more and more as we go on. So younger people have quicker access to remove the blocks that they have placed there, right? With people relationships, it may be something that they need more training in. But the only way to get people to be more creative, including young people, is to force them to confront their assumptions. You know, all the assumptions that we bring to a situation of what is right and wrong, what is possible and not possible. That Netflix book I mentioned to you, it's called something like This Will Never Work, right? Of course it did work, right? Not only has Netflix redefined everything about, you know, watching movies and TV, they've actually become a producer of content, right? And they've become a word, one of those few words that actually takes over from the thing, right? You Netflix and chill. So really to sum up, Charles, you know, it's the same for the youth as it is for anybody that's in the working world. You know, the way to get more innovative and have more creativity is to be willing to question oneself and one's own judgments and be willing to undergo the process of, like I said, with creativity, right? Thinking differently from yourself. So whatever that entails, whether it's private training, whether it's your own private work, whether it's going in schools, that's the key to unlocking the kind of potential that we have.
That's so powerful, Michael. But, Mike, tell me, because we ran out of time, and people still want more from you.
Sure.
I know, because even myself, I still want more out of you. If people want more out of you, how can they do it? Do you have contact numbers where they can contact you for more information? Do you have any other materials out there that you can help people with?
Yeah, quite a bit. There's basically 2 ways that I'm operating right now. One is the original company that I've got, which is Creativity, which you can see there on this. You can access at, the short code is going to be on the screen right now, I think. It's bit.ly/CY Creativity 2020. On there, you can access basically the actual website and all kinds of different materials that are available. So if you want to access it for either of those ways, you can also email to the email address that's on the screen, or you can even check my website at www.createyourcreativity.tv. But again, hopefully all that's on the screen. And I invite you, sir, to join in one of our public workshops that we have starting every couple months, which are done online. We have other activities, but all of that can be found on the addresses I've given you.
Well, it is my pleasure to have you here. I can't wait to have you back, especially when we've got reviews of the show.
Fantastic. I look forward to that. That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you very much for the show.
Well, I am Charles Ngobeni signing off on Marketplace with Charles. You can get hold of me on www.charlesngobeni.com or Instagram Charles_Ngobeni. You can go on Facebook and like me. I would love to hear from you how the show impacts you. I would love to communicate with you. Well, God bless you. Till next time.
Join Marketplace with Charles on an 11-day tour of the Holy Land. Take the route Israel traveled to the Promised Land, cross over the Red Sea, and float on the Dead Seas, the lowest point on earth with amazing healing properties. Experience the vibe of Jericho and cruise on the Sea of Galilee to Capernaum, the hometown of Jesus. Visit the pools of Bethesda, Nazareth, Bethlehem, and many more. Walk where Jesus walked and see the Bible come alive. If beautiful memories and an enriched spirit is what you are looking for, then join us in taking Jesus to the marketplace. For more information, call us on +27 72 123 0078 or email israel@artofskincare.co.za.